أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله
السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدًا عبده ورسوله أما بعد فأعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. من ذا الذي يقرض الله قرضا حسنا فيضاعفه له أضعافا كثيرا والله يقبض ويبسط وإليه ترجعون. कौन है जो अल्लाह को कर्जा हसना दे ताकि वो इसके लिए उसे कई गुना बढ़ाए, और अल्लाह रिस्क कब्ज़ भी कर लेता है और खोल भी देता है और तुम उसी की तरफ लौटाए जाओगे.
After reciting the Tashahhud, Ta'awuz and Surah Al-Fatiha, Hazrat Khalifatul Masih V, Ayyadullah Ta'ala Nasr Aziz, recited verse 246 of chapter 2 and then stated, "Who is it that will lend Allah a goodly loan, that He may multiply it for him manyfold? And Allah receives and enlarges, and to Him shall you be made to return."
इस आयत में अल्लाह ताला को कर्ज देने का जिक्र है. इसका भी ये मतलब नहीं कि नाउज़ु बिल्लाह अल्लाह ताला को इंसानी पैसे की ज़रूरत है और अपनी ज़रूरियात पूरी करने के लिए वो कर्ज़ मांग रहा है. कर्ज़ के एक तो आम मानी है जो हम कर्ज़ के लेन देन में इस्तेमाल करते हैं.
In this verse, it mentions giving Allah the Almighty a loan.
लेकिन इसके लुग़वी माने
This does not mean that, God forbid, Allah the Almighty is in need of material wealth, and therefore, in order to fulfill His needs, He is asking for a loan. One meaning of a loan is in the common use of the word, which we use for borrowing or lending money or taking a loan. In regards to its lexical meaning, it also means a good or bad recompense. Therefore, in this context, it will mean, who is it that will spend in the way of Allah so that He shall grant an excellent reward? Thus, when this word is used in reference to spending or giving in the way of Allah the Almighty, then it means that He will grant a most excellent reward to the one who spends in His way. This means that if one is spending for the sake of Allah the Almighty and for Him, then Allah the Almighty will grant him an excellent reward in return for it. Allah the Almighty has mentioned about sacrifice and financial sacrifices in numerous instances in the Holy Quran. And to spend in the way of Allah the Almighty's religion or for the service of mankind has been deemed by Allah the Almighty as if one is spending for His sake. And whatever one spends for the sake of Allah the Almighty never goes to waste. Rather, it is a loan which Allah the Almighty returns manyfold. Therefore, no one should think that Allah the Almighty is in need of a loan. In fact, Allah the Almighty is the Lord of all the worlds and grants everything its provisions. He is in need of no one. When Allah the Almighty uses the word loan in relation to Himself, it means that one should spend in His way, and in return, He will grant His countless bounties. Thus, he asks, who is it that will give him a goodly loan? By asking this question, Allah the Almighty has encouraged as to who will spend in His way and become the recipient of His countless rewards and continue to go on receiving them. Moreover, later in the verse, Allah the Almighty Himself has explained this by stating that He does not ask of this loan in order to keep it for Himself or for His own use. Rather, it is so that He may grant manifold in return.
अगर तुम मेरे दीन के लिए मेरी मखलूक की बेहतरी के लिए खर्च करोगे तो कई गुना बढ़ाकर तुम्हें वापस लौटाऊंगा.
In other words, he proclaims that he is taking this wealth as a loan, so by spending in the way of his religion and for the service of mankind, he will grant manifold in return. Furthermore, by referring to this as qarz-e-hasana, i.e. a goodly loan, means that this will only be considered as spending in the way of Allah when one does so willingly and with complete contentment of the heart. Only then it will be considered as a goodly loan for which Allah the Almighty will return in manifold. In one of his gatherings, the promised Messiah ﷺ has spoken in relation to this. He states, when Allah the Almighty asks for a loan, this does not mean that, God forbid, He is in need of it. To entertain such a doubt is kufr, i.e. disbelief. In fact, what it actually means is that He will return it in manifold. This is a method that Allah adopts through which He bestows His blessings. Then on another occasion, the promised Messiah ﷺ states, a foolish one claims that Man dhalladhi yuqridullaha qardan hasana, who is it that will lend Allah a goodly loan? Therefore it must mean that, God forbid, God is in need. The Prophet ﷺ states that such people who utter such words are extremely foolish. The Prophet ﷺ states, these foolish people fail to understand, because since when does this mean that God is in need of it? When Allah the Almighty speaks about a goodly loan, how does it mean that He is in need of it? The Prophet ﷺ states, here the meaning of a loan is that which one promises to repay. The whole purpose of a loan is that one pledges for the loan to be paid back. The Prophet ﷺ states, they add it from themselves that he is in need. In other words, those who level this allegation add it from themselves that God is in need or poor. Nowhere has God Almighty mentioned that they should give him so that he may spend it on himself because he is hungry and in need. Indeed, what Allah the Almighty has stated is that when His servants are hungry and in need and one spends for their sake, then it is as if one has spent in the way of Allah. The Prophet ﷺ further states, here the meaning of a loan is that who is it who will perform righteous deeds in the way of Allah the Almighty, and Allah shall grant manifold reward in return for it. If one performs even a single deed for the sake of Allah the Almighty, He will return its reward in manifold. It is not just concerning wealth and money. The Prophet ﷺ states, this is completely in line with the honor of God. If one carefully ponders over the relationship between His divine providence and His creation, then one can easily understand this, because irrespective of one's good deeds, prayers, supplications, or drawing distinction between a believer and a disbeliever, God Almighty is providing for everyone and nurturing them. Allah the Almighty is providing for everyone, irrespective of them being a disbeliever or a believer. And He grants the blessings of His divine providence and mercy to all. Thus, how can God Almighty let one's righteous deeds go to waste?
उसको किस तरह हो सकता है कि अल्लाह ताला ज़ाया करे और उसका अजर न दे?
When Allah the Almighty is providing and nurturing everyone without any effort on their part, then how is it possible that if one performs a righteous deed, Allah the Almighty will let it go to waste and not reward it?
उसका भी अजर देता है,
The honor of God is such
और जो ज़रा
that
बदी करे
مَن يَعْمَلْ مِثْقَالَ ذَرَّةٍ خَيْرًا يَرَهُ.
ये है कर्ज का असल
Then
मफ़हूम,
whoso
जो
does
इस
an
आयत से
atom's
पाया
weight
जाता
of
है।
good will see it.
क्योंकि असल मफ़हूम कर्ज का इससे
And
पाया
similarly,
जाता था,
one who does an
इसलिए
atom's
यही
weight
कह
of
दिया
evil will
कि
also
मन
see it.
ज़ल्लज़ी
Thus, in the context of this verse, this is the true meaning of a loan.
और उसकी
Since the
तफसील शायद
actual meaning
मौजूद
of
है
qarz, i.e. loan,
कि मैं
applies
यामल
here,
मिस्काल ज़र्रतिन
therefore the actual
खैरन
words
यरा,
has been used in the
जो
verse,
ज़रा भी नेकी
who
करता
is
है
it that will lend
अल्लाह
Allah
ताला
a goodly loan?
कि हाँ
And the
उसको बदला।
explanation of this verse is that مَن
उस
يَعْمَلْ مِثْقَالَ ذَرَّةٍ
अल्लाह
خَيْرًا
ताला
يَرَهُ. That
के
is,
दीन की इशाअत के
whoso
लिए,
does an atom's weight of good will see its reward in this
मखलूक
world.
की खिदमत के लिए माली कुर्बानी करना भी एक बहुत बड़ी नेकी है।
Thus, to offer financial
अल्लाह ताला
sacrifices
कभी
for the propagation of
उसे
Allah the
बगैर अजर के
Almighty's
नहीं
religion
छोड़ता।
and for the service of
दूसरी
mankind
जगह पर
is indeed
कुरान
a
करीम
great
में
deed,
अल्लाह ताला ने इसका जिक्र भी फरमाया है।
which Allah the Almighty never allows
माली
to go
कुर्बानियों के सिलसिले
unrewarded.
में तो अफराद जमात से बेहतर
Allah the Almighty has mentioned this in another
कौन जान
instance in
सकता
the Holy Quran as well.
हर तबका के अहमदी का ज़ाती तजुर्बा है
Who can understand the true
कि अल्लाह
essence
ताला की
of
खातिर
financial sacrifices better
अल्लाह
than the
ताला की
members
रज़ा
of the
चाहने
Jamaat?
के लिए उसकी राह में खर्च करना
Every Ahmadi has
जहाँ
personal
दिल के
experience
सुकून
of
का
this,
बायस बनता है,
that not only do
वहाँ
financial
दुनियावी लिहाज
sacrifices
से
which are
ये
made for the sake of
हज़ारों
Allah the
लोग
Almighty and to
इस
attain
तजुर्बा से
His
गुजरते हैं
pleasure
कि हैरत
grant
अंगेज़ तौर
contentment of
पर
the heart,
अल्लाह
but
ताला
even from a worldly standpoint,
वो रकम जो उन्होंने अल्लाह ताला की
thousands
रज़ा की
of
खातिर दी
people have
होती है
also experienced how
वापस
Allah
लौटा
the
देते हैं।
Almighty has miraculously
ऐसे बहुत से
returned
अहमदी
their
हैं
wealth
जो
which
सिर्फ
they had spent to seek His pleasure.
कुर्बानी करते हैं, यानी कुर्बानी के नाम पे कुर्बानी करते हैं और सिर्फ ये ख्वाहिश होती है कि अल्लाह ताला राज़ी हो जाए। इनके दिल में ये ख्याल भी नहीं होता कि इसका
There
बदला
are
मुझे
many
मिल जाएगा
Ahmadis
दुनिया
who
में,
make financial
ये दुनियावी माल की
sacrifices
सूरत में।
simply for the sake of
लेकिन
offering a sacrifice,
अल्लाह
and
ताला
their only
ये
desire
फरमाता है
is to please
कि
Allah
मैं
the Almighty.
आसन रंग में इसको लौटाऊंगा, वो लौटा देता
They
है।
do not even think about attaining any worldly
बाद
wealth
ऐसे भी
in
हैं
return.
जो बुरे हालात के बावजूद कुर्बानी कर देते हैं
However, Allah the
और ये
Almighty,
उम्मीद रखते हैं कि खुदा
who has
ताला उनकी
declared that He shall return it
अपनी
in an
ज़रूरियात जो हैं
excellent manner, indeed
वो
does so.
किसी न किसी तरह पूरी कर ही देगा
There are some
और
people
अल्लाह
who,
ताला
despite facing straitened circumstances,
उनकी
offer
ख्वाहिश को भी पूरा कर
sacrifices
देता है।
and have faith that Allah the Almighty will in some
और
way
उनको
or
भी
another
हैरत होती है
fulfill their needs
कि
Himself.
किस तरह खुदा ताला ने ज़रूरत पूरी कर दी।
And Allah the
लेकिन शर्त
Almighty
ये है
indeed does so,
कि नेक
which
नियति से
even leaves them
खुदा
astonished
ताला की रज़ा की खातिर
as to
कुर्बानी
how
की
God
जाए
Almighty provided for them.
और कुर्बानी
However, the
और
condition
और
is that one
इसके और
ought to
इसके
offer the
लिए
sacrifice with a pious
बाकी
intention and in order to
अहकामात
seek
और
the
नेकियों
pleasure
को
of
भी
God Almighty
बजा लाया जाए। ये नहीं कि सिर्फ माल दे दिया
and to
उसमें ये
also
मैंने
fulfill
बहुत
His
कुर्बानी कर दी,
commandments and
बाकी
perform
फ़राइज़ पूरे
righteous
कर लिए।
deeds.
बाकी नेकियां बजा लाना भी ज़रूरी है।
It should
ना
not
कि
be
एक
the
कारोबारी
case
शख्स
that
की
one
तरह
simply
सिर्फ
donates
इस सोच
money
के साथ
and then
माल खर्च करो
assumes as if they have offered a great
कि इसका
sacrifice.
मुनाफा लेना है।
In fact, it is also
अल्लाह ताला
important
की
to
राह में
fulfill
ज़रूर
the
मुनाफा
other
करेंगे।
commandments and perform other
बहरहाल
righteous deeds along with
मैं
it.
इस वक्त
It should not be
बाज़
done
लोगों
like
के
a mere business
अपने वाक़यात
transaction
पेश
with
करता
the
हूँ
intention that
जिन्होंने
if
अल्लाह
it is
ताला
given
की
in
इस
the way of
इरशाद
Allah
से
the
फैज़
Almighty,
पाया।
they will make a profit from it.
अक्सर ऐसे वाक़यात हैं जिनमें खालिस
In any
होकर
case, I shall now
उन्होंने अल्लाह
present
ताला की
various
खातिर
accounts of those
कुर्बानी
who
दी
became the recipient of the
और
blessings of
हैरत
Allah the
अंगेज़ तौर पर
Almighty
उनकी
in
ज़रूरियात को
accordance
न
to this
सिर्फ अल्लाह ताला
promise
ने
of
पूरा
His.
किया बल्कि बढ़ा कर दिया। बहुत से ऐसे हैं
Many of the accounts are such
जिन्होंने इस
that
बात की
people have
परवाह नहीं
offered
की
sacrifices for the sake of
कि
Allah the
अपनी
Almighty with the utmost
और
sincerity,
अपने बच्चों की
and
भूख
not
किस तरह
only did
मिटाई,
Allah the Almighty miraculously return it, but
लेकिन
increased
चंद
it
मिनट
manifold.
के अंदर अंदर अल्लाह ताला ने उससे बढ़कर उनके मुंह
There are
मिटाने
many
के सामान
who
पैदा
made
किए।
sacrifices and were not even sure as to how they
उनके
would be
पास
able
था
to
उससे
even
बहुत बढ़कर
provide
दे दिया
food for themselves and their children.
और यूं ये बात
But within minutes, Allah the
उनके
Almighty
ईमान
provided far greater means for their
की
provisions
तकवीत का जरिया
and
बनी।
to alleviate their hunger. They received far greater in return
बस ये हैं
than what they
वो
originally had,
अल्लाह ताला की रज़ा
and this
हासिल करने वाले
became
लोग
a means of further strengthening their
जिनकी
faith.
बेशुमार मिसालें आज हमें जमात अहमदिया में नजर आती हैं।
Thus, these are those people who attain the pleasure of Allah the Almighty, and we find countless examples of them today amongst the members of the Ahmadiyya community. The president and missionary in charge of Guinea-Conakry has written an account. He states that he read out my sermon on Waqf-e-Jadid from the previous year in his mosque, in which I had mentioned the importance of financial sacrifices, and I also presented various extracts from the writings of the promised Messiah alayhi salam. In one of those extracts, the promised Messiah alayhi salam mentioned that among the 5 means to attain the nearness of Allah the Almighty was striving in His cause through the sacrifice of one's wealth. Furthermore, the promised Messiah alayhi salam stated that one cannot have love for worldly wealth and God Almighty at the same time. Love for both cannot exist at the same time in one's heart. Similarly, he also read out the various faith-inspiring accounts of financial sacrifice which I narrated. He states, after the Friday prayers, a poor and very devout Ahmadi, Musa Quba Sahib, took out however much money he had in his pocket and with great sincerity presented it for Waqf-e-Jadid, even though he had already paid his chanda. Upon inquiring the amount he had donated, he replied, I have simply given whatever I had in my pocket, and you can count it for yourself. I have offered this in order to attain the love of Allah the Almighty, and therefore did not count it. When it was counted, it amounted to 85,000 francs. We advised him that since he had taken out all of the money from his pocket to donate, he should take some money back, as he would need some to cover his travel cost as well. Upon this, he replied, did you not hear that the promised Messiah ﷺ has stated that one's heart cannot harbor 2 loves? Therefore, allow me today to instill the love of Allah alone and place my reliance upon Him. And thereafter he joyfully walked home. These are the incidents when one witnesses them, and the missionary has also written that one's heart becomes filled with gratitude to Allah the Almighty for granting such loyal people to the community of the promised Messiah ﷺ. People listen to the sermons and say that they have indeed listened to them. But to listen to the sermon with so much attention, whereby he recalled that the promised Messiah ﷺ has stated that one cannot harbor 2 loves in their heart. Therefore, he was not willing to keep the money he had in his pocket, lest it is counted as harboring love for it, and instead he immediately acted upon the instructions. People often say that they do not understand. This is an example where one listens with full attention and then acts upon what they hear. How extraordinary are these sacrifices! This is in line with the conditions of the bay'at, that one will always strive to fulfill the oath they made with Allah the Almighty, and they will not harbor any grievances. Furthermore, it pleases them when they have the opportunity to offer sacrifices, and they become ready to present these sacrifices with the complete sincerity. Our opponents say that they will wipe the name of Ahmadiyya from the earth. Who has the strength to wipe out such sincere and loving members? Allah the Almighty nurtures such people, and the enemies are destroyed without a trace. Denawa Sahiba, a member of Jamaat Ahmadiyya France, pledged allegiance a short while ago and faces opposition from her family. She says, I have always tried to take part in all the financial initiatives, whether it is Waqf-e-Jadid, Tahreek-e-Jadid or mosque funds. I have witnessed the blessings of financial sacrifices with my own eyes. She further says, my situation with respect to paying my Waqf Jadid Chanda was such that I had been in search for employment for a long time, but had not managed to secure a job. The day I paid my Chanda for Waqf Jadid, 10 minutes after I had paid the amount, I received a phone call saying that I had been offered a job at a very big firm.
और ख़ास तौर पर वक्फ़े की अदायगी के फ़ौरन बाद काम का हसूल जो है यकीनन अल्लाह ताला की तरफ से मेरे लिए एक निशान है। काज़ाकिस्तान
Attaining a job after paying towards these chandas, in particular straight after paying Waqf Jadid,
जिसलान साहब
for
की
me
अहलिया
is certainly a sign from Allah the Almighty.
ने चंद साल पहले बैत की थी।
The missionary from
इस दफ़ा अपनी
Kazakhstan
सालगिरह के मौके पर
writes that the wife
7,000
of
टेंगे
Dislan Sahib,
local
who is a
currency
local muallim,
तरीके
pledged allegiance a few years ago.
आधी करके दे दी।
This year,
वो बयान करती हैं इस रकम की अदायगी के
on
एक
her
हफ्ते के बाद
birthday,
ही
she
मुझे
gave 7,000 tenge,
70,000
the local
tenge
currency,
रकम
split
इसके लिए
between
बोली
Tehreek Jadid and Waqf Jadid.
अल्लाह ताला की
She
राह में
says,
कुर्बानी की
1 week after I
उसने
paid
10
this
गुना बढ़ा
amount,
के वापस कर दी।
I unexpectedly received 70,000
बाद
tenge.
लोग कहते हैं कि हमारे साथ कोई क्यों नहीं ऐसा
Having
होता?
made a
हमारे साथ
sacrifice in the
तो
way of
वापस
Allah
नहीं
the
आता।
Almighty, she was returned
कुछ चाहिए कि
tenfold the
इस्तिग़फ़ार
amount.
भी करें और
Some
अपने
people
दिलों को
say,
टटोलें।
why does this not happen with
क्या इस
them?
कुर्बानी के वक्त
Or why do they not have such
उनकी
experiences?
नीयत खालिसतन
They ought to recite
लिल्लाह
istighfar
कुर्बानी की
and
थी।
assess what is in their hearts,
अगर
and
थी
whether they offered their sacrifices solely for the sake of Allah.
तो फिर इस बात पर खुश होना चाहिए कि अल्लाह ताला ने
If
कुर्बानी की
this was
तौफीक
the
अता
case,
फरमाई।
then such people
बस
can
अल्लाह
never
ताला
have
जो
any
देना था,
grievances.
किस तरीके से देना है वो दे देगा। हो सकता है आज नहीं तो कल दे देगा। लेकिन
One should
नीयत
rejoice
ये
that Allah
होती
the
है
Almighty granted them an
लोग शुक्रिया
opportunity
अदा
to offer sacrifice.
जो थोड़े दिल से करते हैं
Allah
ऐसे
the
लोगों को
Almighty
नमाज़ें भी
has promised to bestow.
बोझ लग रही होती हैं।
How He shall bestow, if He does not bestow it today, then
Moscow-
He will do so tomorrow.
एक दोस्त हैं अब्दुल रहीम साहब
Nonetheless, whoever's intention is
कहते हैं
for
कि
this,
नौकरी के मामले
they
में
will
मेरी
harbor
किस्मत हमेशा
grievances.
खराब रही।
Few people are like this, and
जहाँ
such
भी
people
काम
even
मिलता है
consider
वहाँ
prayers
तनख्वाह
to be a
इतनी कम
burden.
होती कि सारी फैमिली को
A member from Moscow, Abdul Rahim Sahib, says,
एक मरतबा तो एक माह की तनख्वाह भी
with
ज़्यादा
regards
होती
to
है।
my job, I've always been
लेकिन फिर अल्लाह
unfortunate.
ताला ने ऐसा फजल फरमाया
Wherever
कि
I
मेरी
obtained a
तनख्वाह में
job,
इजाफा होने
my
लग गया।
income would be so low that it would be difficult for me and my
मैं
family to
समझ गया कि
survive.
खुदा ताला की तरफ से
On one
इशारा है
occasion, I did not even receive
मुझे
my
चंदे
1
की
month's salary.
चंदे जात जो हैं बाकायदगी
But
से
then
अदा
Allah the
करने
Almighty blessed me in a way
चुनांचे मैंने
that my
चंदा
salary began to increase.
अदा करने शुरू कर दिए जितने
I
चंदे थे
realized
बाकायदगी से
that
देने शुरू
perhaps
कर
this was a sign from Allah the Almighty
दिए।
that
इन
I should
अदायगी
pay
के
my
नतीजे
chanda
में
regularly.
अल्लाह ताला ने मज़ीद फजल किया
Therefore, I
और
began
मुझे
to
एक ऐसी
pay
नौकरी
all
की
the
पेशकश
chandas
मिली
regularly.
जिसका मैं 2 साल से इंतजार कर रहा था और अल्लाह के फजल से
Due to
मुझे
paying
एक
this
तौफीक
regularly,
दी।
Allah the Almighty blessed me
अदायगी की
greatly
तौफीक मिली है
in that I received an offer for a job that I
और
had been
मुझे
waiting
ख़ास तौर पर
for
इस
2
बात का
years.
इदराक हो गया है कि
By the
चंदों की
grace of
अदायगी
Allah,
में
I have
मुस्तकिल
had the
मिजाजी
opportunity to
की
pay
वजह
Waqf
से
Jadid as well.
अल्लाह ताला इंसान की आमदनी बढ़ाता
I have
चला जाता
especially understood from all
है और
this
आमदनी का मुस्तकिल
that Allah
इंसान
goes
के
on increasing the
बर्बाद
wealth of the one who pays chanda regularly,
और के बगैर मैं बड़ा शुक्रगुजार हूँ अल्लाह का कि उसने मुझे
and also ensures they consistently receive an income.
शामिल चंदायात में जमाती चंदायात में शामिल होने की तौफीक अता फरमाई। सेरा लियोन से
I am very grateful that Allah the Almighty has
Or
granted me the
wale-
opportunity to regularly contribute
साहब कहते हैं
towards the chandas of the Jamaat.
कि चंदा बखरीद की वसूली के बारे में मुख्तलिफ जमातों के दौरा जात किए
Iftikhar Sahib, a missionary
अब
serving in the Waterloo region of
जमात
Sierra
को
Leone,
बताया कि
says,
हमारी तरफ से आपको चंदों की अहमियत बताने
I
की
visited
हुई है।
various Jamaats in order to
ये
inform
चंदे
them
के
about Waqf
वक्त,
Jadid,
ऐलान के वक्त मैंने ऐलान किया था कि सेरा लियोन में
and that there had been a shortcoming on their part with regards to explaining to them about the importance of giving chanda.
और वो अगर चाहें तो
During the announcement of Tehreek Jadid, I mentioned that Sierra Leone has
चुनांचे
a
उन्होंने
lot
इस
of
प्रोग्राम को
potential,
लेके जमातों में गए
and with a bit of effort, they could increase their chanda.
कि सेरा लियोन काफ़ी बड़ी और पुरानी जमात है और
Thus,
अफराद
he
जमात
took this
कुर्बानियां
message
करने
to
के लिए
various
तैयार हैं।
Jamaats and
सुस्ती
stated
है,
that Khalifatul Masih has sent
बहुत
the
ज़्यादा
message
मुश्किल।
that the Jamaat of Sierra Leone is very big and has been established for a long
ये
time,
पैगाम सुन के
and also that the members of the Jamaat are always ready to offer
अहबाब
sacrifices.
जमात
If there is a shortcoming, then it is on part of the office bearers. He
और
further says, upon hearing this
उन्होंने
message,
ना सिर्फ ये कि वफ़ीद की चंदे अदा कर
the
दी,
members were greatly
बल्कि
moved
दूसरे चंदा
and
जात में भी
inspired.
इजाफे के साथ अदायगी की।
Not only did they pay the Waqf Jadid,
18
they also gave more towards the other chandas.
रब्ता किया। हाँ, न्यूटन जगह में 18 घरानों में रब्ता किया।
There is a place named
इसके नतीजे
Newton
में 13 लाख लियोन
in Sierra
एक ही दिन
Leone.
में वसूल हो गए।
After contacting 18 households there, 1.3 million leon was collected in just one day. 2 students from Ahmadi schools gave 300,000 leon towards Waqf Jadid and gave a further 200,000 later on. One girl from Newton, Muslima Rafona, gave 50,000 leon and said to request Khalifatul Masih for prayers for her. He further says, 5 students informed me that from the income they received for their labor work, they gave 50,000 leon towards Waqf Jadid. Thus, these are the people who respond to the call of the Khalifa. They have never met me, nor seen me in person, but their hearts are filled with love and respect for Khilafat, and are ready to offer every sacrifice for Allah the Almighty. Observe another incident of their love from another member of the Newton Jamaat. He further says, I went to the house of Asba and informed him about giving chanda. I read out the passage in which it was mentioned that the people of Sierra Leone are ready to offer sacrifices. His wife became extremely emotional and said, what Khalifatul Masih has said is absolutely true. She then said, the only issue is that today I have nothing with me at home to give. He further narrates, I was still sitting there when all of a sudden she received some money that she was not expecting. Immediately she handed all the amount to the Secretary Mal, who was present there as well, and said to give her the receipt of the chanda. When I counted the money, it amounted to 200,000 leon, all of which she gave as part of chanda. She was then very pleased and content after giving this money. There was no complaint as to the timing of when she received the money, nor that she was in need of the money herself, but he had taken it for chanda. I said to her to keep some amount at home for food and provisions, etc., but she replied that she would not keep any of it. Whatever she had received, she gave as chanda and had no worry at all. But Allah the Almighty is never indebted to anyone. He further narrates, a short while later, she received a substantial amount of money from somewhere else, which was sufficient for her provisions, etc. A missionary from Kyrgyzstan writes, a devout Kyrgyz Ahmadi, Kobat Sahib, resides in Bishkek. He informed me that he had promised to give 1,000 som for Waqf Jadid. Som is the currency of Kyrgyzstan. 1 month before the financial year for Waqf Jadid was about to end, the president of our Jamaat delivered a sermon shedding light on the importance of Waqf Jadid chanda. In the sermon, he read out incidents from a previous sermon of Khalifatul Masih. Up until then, I had only given 200 som, but on the same day I gave the remaining amount from my promise of 1,000 som, which I had not been able to give up until then. I have a sister who is unwell. The government gives her 400 som each month. On the same day after the Friday prayers, when I put the card in the ATM machine to get my sister's pension, there was 10,000 som in her account. 1 week earlier, my mother had written to the authorities, stating that it was difficult to manage within the allowance they gave, and so they ought to increase it. I thought that this amount was from the authorities. But today, on the morning of 29th of December, I received a phone call from the authorities in which they said that according to their promise, they will increase the allowance to 5,000 som. In addition to this, he received an additional 5,000 som. He says that he offered chanda from this amount, as they had spent money previously, or perhaps they took it out from this amount. He says that he instantly received the blessings from giving chanda, in that he was unable to locate where the extra money came from. Since it came into their account, The bank said that the money was theirs, as they had nothing to do with that money. Thus, these sacrifices become a source of increasing one's faith. Amir Sahib of Tanzania writes that when Khair Rashidi Sahib from the Zanzibar Jamaat was reminded about contributing towards Waqf Jadid towards the end of the year, in fact, he wrote this himself and said, "When I was reminded about contributing towards Waqf Jadid, I did not have a job, nor did I have any money to pay towards it. But I requested the missionary to include my name on the list of those who had paid their promises, and said that Allah the Almighty would provide the means for me to pay it." He further narrates, "Only 2 days had passed from this incident that I managed to get a job as a driver. From my first income, I was able to pay Waqf Jadid for myself as well as for my children. Thus, my intention of paying Chanda ensured that I secured a job." He also says that this became a means of further strengthening his faith. Amir Sahib Tanzania writes that Taha Sahib from the Iringa region mentioned that this year he witnessed extraordinary occurrences in relation to Waqf Jadid. He mentioned that his promise was 600,000 shillings. Owing to his financial difficulties, in November he wrote to Khalifatul Masih saying that overall the financial and business situation in the country was dire. Therefore, he requested prayers for Allah the Almighty to grant him an opportunity to pay his Waqf Jadid promise. The people who write letters to me, they do not write only for personal reasons. They also write expressing their worry over not being able to pay their chanda and request prayers in this regard. Some incidents will be mentioned later in which people offered prayers and tahajjud prayers, so they are granted the opportunity to pay their chanda, as opposed to fulfilling their personal needs. He writes, "As soon as I had written the letter, I felt content that Allah would provide the means to pay it, God willing, and only 24 hours had passed since I wrote the letter that a person came to see me through a recommendation about a business proposal and consultation regarding it. Upon meeting him, I realized that 15 years ago we were class fellows. We spoke regarding the work, and later, through him, I managed to get a contract worth 6 million shillings. He then writes, "Allah the Almighty returned tenfold the amount I had given in chanda. In exchange for 600,000, he gave back 6 million in return. From the money I received as advance, the first thing I did was to pay my Waqf Jadid promise." Juma Sahib, a new convert from Zanzibar, works in a grocery market. He writes, "When we were reminded about contributing towards Waqf Jadid, in those days, the demand for supplies stopped. He worked to load and unload vehicles. My financial situation was very difficult. I prayed a few days of tahajjud. As I mentioned about this earlier, he is a poor laborer, but he is not praying for his personal needs or to be given enough money to buy provisions for food. He states, a few days in my tahajjud prayers, I supplicated especially to be able to pay my chanda. When he woke for tahajjud prayers, he only supplicated for Allah the Almighty not to allow him to remain behind in offering financial sacrifice. Thus, just 3 days before the end of the Waqf Jadid year, his work resumed, and he earned 300,000 shillings, through which he mentioned that he was able to pay his chanda as well as on behalf of his children. He does not say that they received enough money for their needs. Rather, he says that he was able to pay his chanda and that of his children. He says,
जिनको फिक्र है
since I have performed the bayat,
चंदों की
Allah the Almighty has blessed my wealth abundantly
तहज्जुद में जैसा कि
as a
मैंने कहा,
result of
खास
my
तौर पर
contribution towards chanda.
रो रो कर दुआ कर रहे हैं तो ये
These people are such
कि खुदा ताला
that they are
चंदा
only
अदा करने की
concerned
तौफीक
about
अता
making contributions towards chanda.
एक
And
दुनिया
as
में
I
इंसान
mentioned,
ये बातें सुनकर
they are praying
कह सकता है
fervently and supplicating
पागलपन
especially for this during the
लेकिन
tahajjud
यही
prayers,
दुनियादार
for Allah the Almighty to
की
enable them to
नज़र में
pay
जो
their
बेवकूफ़
chanda.
लोग हैं
A
यही वो
worldly
लोग
person
हैं
may listen to these words and
जिनसे अल्लाह
say
ताला
that
प्यार
they
करता
are
है
absurd.
और फिर उनकी
However,
ज़रूरतें खुद ही पूरी
it is
करता
the same foolish people in the sight of worldly individuals whom Allah the Almighty
है वो उसमें
loves
अजीब अजीब
and
वाक़यात
whose
मिलते
needs
रहते हैं
He fulfills Himself.
गैम्बिया के अमीर साहब लिखते हैं नॉर्थ
There are
बैंक रीजन के
extraordinary
गांव के
incidents
दुकानदार
mentioned
इब्राहिम
in the reports.
साहब बड़े कामयाब ताजर थे
Amir Sahib
और
of
लोग
the
उनकी
Gambia
मानते
writes,
वगैरह उनके पास रखवाया करते थे
a shop owner in a village in the North Bank region,
और उस
Ibrahim
वक्त
Sahib,
गैरंटी
was
थी
a very successful businessman,
बाद वजूहात की
and
बिना
people
पर
would
अचानक
entrust
दिवालिया हो
him
गए
with their belongings, etc.
और उन्होंने लोगों की मानतों में से भी खर्च कर लिया अपने कारोबार को बचाने के लिए
He was a non-Ahmadi at the
जब
time.
हमें खतरा हुआ कि वो
All
मानते
of
भी
a
वापस नहीं
sudden,
कर
he became
पाएंगे
bankrupt due to
तो
various
अपने
reasons
हवाई मुल्क
and
गिनी
spent
कुनाकरी
the
चले
items
गए
people had
दौड़ के
entrusted
मुल्क
him
छोड़ के
with to save his
3
business.
साल तक गिनी कुनाकरी रहे
When he feared that
फिर
he
उन्होंने
would not be
फैसला
able to
किया
return the entrusted
कि
items,
उन्होंने वापस जाना
he
चाहिए
returned to his home country of Guinea
दिल
Conakry.
में
He
नेकी
fled
थी
the country and stayed in
ये
Guinea
फैसला किया
Conakry for
हालात का
3
मुकाबला
years.
करने ही वापस जाके
Following this, he decided
और
that he
जो
should
कर्जे हैं
return.
किसी न किसी तरह वापस करने चाहिए लोगों के चुनांचे
He had a
उन्होंने
pure heart
गांव
and
के
decided
चीफ
to
और डिस्ट्रिक्ट
return
चीफ को
and
फ़ोन
face
किया
the circumstances
और एक मौका
and
देने की
somehow
मन्नत समाई
repay his debts to the
मुझे
people.
मौका दो मुझे वापस आने दो गिरफ्तार न करना तो
Hence,
मैं कोशिश
he
करूंगा
called the
कि सारे
chief and the district chief
कर्जे
of the
अदा कर
village and
चुनांचे
pleaded
चीफ
with
ने इस
them
शर्त पर वापस
to
आने
be
की
given
इजाज़त
the
दी
opportunity to return.
कि वो मेहनत करके कमाएंगे और
He
लोगों की
requested for
अमानतें
them
वापस करेंगे
not to arrest him and
अगर
that he
ऐसा
would
न कर
try
सके
to
तो
repay
जेल
all
भेज
his
दिया
debts.
जाएगा
Hence, the chief permitted him to return on
कहते
the
हैं उन्हें आए
condition
हुए अभी 4 माह का हुआ था
that he would work
अरसा हुआ था
diligently and return the
उन
wealth of the
तक
people.
तब तक मसीह
If he was
इस्लाम
unable
का
to
पैगाम
do so,
पहुंचा
he would be sent to prison.
इसे सुनकर उन्होंने अहमदियत कबूल कर ली
He says only 4 months had
बाकायदगी से
passed
चंदा अदा
since he
करना
had
शुरू कर
returned
दिया
when he received the
वाली
message of the
तालीकात
Promised
में भी
Messiah
हिस्सा लेने
Islam.
लगे जो आमद होती थी उसमें से कुछ ना कुछ हिस्सा
He
डालते
heard the
रहते
message and accepted Ahmadiyyat
और अल्लाह
and
ताला के
started
फजल से
contributing towards
चंदा
chanda
की अदायगी
regularly.
से उनके काम में इतनी बरकत पड़ी
He also started partaking in the
2 साल
financial
के अरसे
initiatives
में
of the
उन्होंने
Jamaat.
ना सिर्फ अपने
He would
तमाम
contribute a
कर्ज अदा
portion
कर
of
दिए
whatever he earned.
जो कि 2 लाख
By the grace of
83
Allah the
थे
Almighty and as a
बल्कि
result of
अपना
paying
मकान भी
chanda,
तमीर कर लिया
his work was
और
blessed to
दुकान भी
such an
दोबारा से
extent
कायम कर ली
that not only did he
और अब
repay
उनका
his
काम पहले
entire
से
debt
बहुत
within
बरकत
2
वृद्धि
years,
कर रहा है
which amounted to
और फिर कहते
200,000
हैं कि सब कुछ
dalasis,
चंदे की बरकत से हुआ
but he built his own house and also
ऑस्ट्रेलिया
re-established
जमात
his
की
shop.
एक और लजना मेंबर हैं
His
बयान करती
business
हैं
is now flourishing even greater than before, and he
कि जब
personally
हमने
says
नए
that
घर में
all of
शिफ्ट
this
हुए
is a result
तो
of the
हमारी
blessings
माली
of
हालात
chanda.
अच्छे नहीं थे घर का किराया भी ज़्यादा था मेरे पास इतने पैसे नहीं थे कि ज़रूरी सामान खरीद सकूं
A Lajna member from the Jamaat
और
in
दूसरी
Australia
तरफ चंदे
says,
का साल भी ख़त्म हो रहा था मैंने अल्लाह
when
की
we
तौफीक
moved into
करते
a new
हुए
house,
चंदा अदा कर दिया
our financial circumstances were not good. The rent for the house was also very high. I did not have enough money to buy necessities, and on the other hand, financial year was also coming to an end. I placed my trust in Allah and paid the chanda.
उसी दिन शाम को कहती हैं मेरे
This is a
शौहर
woman
ने
living in a materialistic
आए और
country
मुझे लाके कुछ
and not
पैसे
in an
दिए
impoverished country.
और कहने लगे कि
She
मुझे
prayed,
आज
O Allah, do
मेरे
not make
फसल
me
बोनस
dependent
मिला
on
है
someone else
और
and
ये सिर्फ
provide
मुझे
me
मिला
with the
सारे
necessities yourself.
मुलाजमीन
She
में
says, the same
और
evening
किसी
my
को
husband
मिला
returned home and gave me some
जो
money
मेरे
and
चंदे
said,
की रकम से
I received
दुगनी
this
रकम
today as a bonus from my
ये
supervisor.
कहती हैं अल्लाह ताला का ऐसा
From
फजल
among
और
all
एहसान
the
था
employees, only I
कि
received
मैं
it.
हैरान रह गई
She says, this was twice the
और
amount
मुझे
of my
यकीन हो
chanda.
गया कि अल्लाह ताला
This is
की
such a
खातिर
blessing
किसी
and
भी
favor
कुर्बानी
of Allah the Almighty,
करने वाले को कभी
which left me in
बेजारो
complete
मददगार नहीं
astonishment.
छोड़ता
And I gained certainty of the fact that Allah the Almighty never forsakes a person who makes sacrifices in His cause.
इंडिया भारत से कमरुद्दीन साहब लिखते हैं कि माली साल के अख्ताम इंस्पेक्टर हैं ये माली साल के अख्ताम पर नाज़म वक्फी के हमरा दौरे पर जमात कालीकट पहुंचा इस दौरान एक एमडी
Kamruddin Sahib from India writes,
इन्होंने 8 साल
at the end of the financial year,
और मामूली मजदूरी
the
करके
inspector,
गुजर
along
करते
with
हैं।
Nazim of Waqf Jadid,
घर
visited
पहुंचे
Jamaat
उनका 10 साल
in
का
Calicut.
बेटा
During this
Laal
trip, they visited the
Ali
house of an
अपने
Ahmadi, Hanif Sahib, as well.
बुगी और
He
गोलक
performed Bayat
लेकर
8 years
आया
ago
और वक्फी
and
दिन
had a modest job with which he made a living.
बताया कि चंदा उसने वक्फी के लिए
When they
7
reached
रुपए
his
इकट्ठा
home,
किया।
his 10-year-old
जब उसे खोला
son
गया बुगी को
Madlaj Ali, bought his money box, and whilst making his contribution towards Waqf Jadid, he said that he had collected this chanda for Waqf Jadid over the entire year. When the money box was opened, it contained a large amount. The Nazim asked the child, "Children usually save money in order to buy something they like. Why are you contributing it towards Waqf Jadid?" Upon this, the child replied, the essence of which is that Allah the Almighty, the Holy Prophet ﷺ, and the Khulafa have instructed to spend in the way of God, and as such, he is contributing this towards the chanda of Waqf Jadid. This is the moral upbringing of Ahmadi children. How can the opponents of the Ahmadiyya harm the Jamaat whose children are brought up with such training? The opponents can try their level best. However, God Almighty has established this Jamaat in order to spread His religion across the world. And as such, He personally supports it and renders His help on every occasion. Furthermore, He creates love for the Jamaat and a zeal to fulfill its purpose from generation to generation. Amir Sahib Tanzania writes, the Muallim of the Mangochi Jamaat in the neighboring country of Malawi writes, a friend Ibrahim Sahib processes and sells meat. This year he promised to contribute 5,800 Malawian kwacha towards the chanda of Waqf Jadid. He made smaller contributions throughout the year. By December, a portion was still outstanding. However, due to the circumstances of the country, his business had come to a halt. As such, he took a loan and fulfilled his promise. In order to continue his business, he purchased a goat after a week so that he could sell its meat. Only a few days had passed that he was blessed to such an extent that his entire debt was paid off. Hence, those poorer individuals who pay chanda whilst placing their trust in God Almighty and with a spirit of sacrifice, Allah the Almighty blesses them in return. The conditions of the country were evident and are still the same, but even so, God Almighty brought about a change in His circumstances. The Muallim of the Mawala Jamaat in Malawi says that Matinba Sahiba, a widow in our Jamaat, gives alms every year according to her capacity. This year she promised a certain amount, and she fulfilled her promise during the year before the other women. The night after fulfilling her promise, she was told in a dream, "Today God Almighty will aid you in all your works." The following day she went to the Muallim and gave further donations towards Waqf Jadid. She said, "Due to the blessings of giving alms, God Almighty greatly increases the yield of my crops. And this time God Almighty Himself told me that He will help me." Observe just how God Almighty at times brings about the means to increase in their faith right away. The missionary of Albania writes, with regards to the new converts, there is Michaelis Bea Sahib, who pledged his allegiance 3 years ago. He is also the Tabligh secretary and a very active khadim. One day he brought a box which was full of money. He explained that whatever he continued to save over the month, he would keep it in this box in his car, with the intention of giving it in alms for the community. So the first time he brought the box full of money, he donated one part of it on behalf of his 4-month-old son, Bevran Bea Sahib, towards Tehreek Jadid and Waqf Jadid, and the rest from himself towards Tehreek Jadid, Waqf Jadid, and the obligatory chandas. Thereafter, he would continue to bring his box full of money every month, and even in the final month of Waqf Jadid in December, he made a great financial sacrifice according to his capacity. Hence, one develops a passion for making sacrifices after becoming Ahmadis, for they have witnessed the manifestations of the blessings of God Almighty. The Sadr Jamaat of Cheam in the UK says, "We were still far behind in reaching our target, so I would wake up and supplicate in the Tahajjud prayers in relation to this matter. One day my wife told me that if I go to a certain person or so-and-so family, they will surely make further donations. Hence, I contacted them, and the family said that they do not wish for their name to be disclosed, and they then donated £1,000 and a further £1,000 on behalf of their children. On top of that, they said that if they are in need of any more, then I should mention it to them. The Waqf Jadid Secretary of Lajna in Islamabad, UK says, after my graduation from university, I was busy with the upbringing of my children. Now they are 5 and 8 years old, and our chanda were all given from my husband's income, and I would only be receiving child benefit in my account. I would think to myself that however much I spend in the way of Allah, I could not consider it to be true financial sacrifice. Hence, in September this year, I set up a standing order from my personal account to give chanda towards Wasiyat, Tahrik-e-Jadid and Waqf-e-Jadid. Apart from that, I also began giving chanda from my grandmother and uncle, and I set monthly installments to an amount that truly was at times a financial sacrifice in light of my income. This month I gave a request to gain further experience as a teacher at my children's school, but there was no hope of succeeding in being able to do so. The very next day after the first donation of chanda was made from my account, I received a call from the school to come for an interview. After the second payment was made from my account, instead of appointing me as an assistant teacher, the school gave me another important role, through which my income increased tenfold. I was convinced from this that it was all a result of making financial sacrifices in the way of Allah. Farhad Sahib, a missionary in Germany, says, a khadim from our local Jamaat in Wiesbaden told me that he had already given what he promised towards Tahrik-e-Jadid, and in addition, he donated a further amount which he had planned to donate towards Waqf-e-Jadid. This month he received a letter from the tax department which stated that he had to pay €800. Yet despite this, he said that he was determined to still make the donations towards Waqf-e-Jadid and would take a loan to pay off the tax. A few weeks later, he received another letter from the tax department in which they wrote that they had reviewed his paperwork and that he did not have anything to pay, and in fact, they would repay him €4,400. A few days later, he said that he had a car accident in which someone damaged his car, and consequently he received €4,700 due to this. In this way, after showing a little resolve to make an extra donation in alms, God Almighty brought about the means to enable him to do so. One may deem this as a mere coincidence, but a believer recognizes that this is all as a result of the special favors of God Almighty. The Sadr Lajna of Canada says, one Lajna member said that 3 years prior, her husband was busy with his education, so she had to work and had all the responsibilities on her shoulders. This tiring routine left her exhausted and she would be unwell for long periods of time. Subsequently, when the time came to make promises towards Waqf-e-Jadid and Tahrik-e-Jadid, she pledged twice the amount of her monthly income. A short while later, she lost her job and was in very constrained circumstances. All her spending would be done using a credit card, and at the end of the year, when the time came to make her donations, she was left with no choice but to place her trust in God Almighty and make her donations using the credit card. God Almighty manifested a wondrous sign of His power, whereby in those very same days she was informed by her bank that she had credit protection insurance and that she could request if she lost her job. In this manner, all her expenditures were covered, and on top of that, she found a new job which was much better than the previous one. Her financial situation had improved. She voluntarily increased her promises towards voluntary chandas, and in the same time, her husband completed his education and received a good job. Hence, she left her job and was able to manage from her husband's income. A missionary from Indonesia writes that Amin Sahib and his family always desired to make all their donations towards Waqf-e-Jadid and Tahrik-e-Jadid during the month of Ramadan. This year his income was low and it seemed impossible to fulfill the donation promised.
The
missionary then writes, I myself witnessed him every day during the month of Ramadan, where despite fasting, he would travel 4 kilometers along with his family to his candle nut field, so that through this he could fulfill the amount he promised. Thus, during the month of Ramadan, he fulfilled his promise of 200,000, and it would have been impossible for him to collect such a large amount without the painstaking effort he made. The missionary then writes that he asked him, "What drives you to make such hard efforts every day whilst fasting?" Thereupon he answered, "My family and I merely wish to attain the pleasure of God Almighty by acting upon the instructions of the Khalifa of the time."
बुकीना फासो काया की एक जमात है, वहाँ के दोस्त हैं, न्यापस है, 10 साल हो इधर सो चुके हैं बैत को उनको, लेकिन चंदों की दायगी में कमज़ोर थे।
There is Nyapa Sahib from the Kaya Jamaat in Burkina Faso, who converted to Ahmadiyyat over 10 years ago. However, he was not regular in offering financial contributions. His household was often riddled with illness and poverty. Some time ago, he began paying special attention towards regularly offering financial contributions, especially to Tahrik-e-Jadid and Waqf-e-Jadid. Due to this, by the grace of Allah the Almighty, not only did his financial situation begin to improve, but Allah the Almighty also started curing his illnesses. And this year, he gave even more for Waqf-e-Jadid. Those who once used to avoid giving him work themselves came to him and offered him contracts for work. Idris Sahib says that it is solely due to the grace of Allah the Almighty that through Waqf-e-Jadid, he created the means for his wealth to increase. Hence, these are the ways in which Allah the Almighty returns a loan manyfold. There are many such incidents, out of which I have presented only a few. May Allah the Almighty always continue to treat members of the community in this manner. May the members of the community continue to offer such sacrifices with sincerity and loyalty. And may Allah the Almighty continue to manifest His grace. Now, along with announcing the new year of Waqf-e-Jadid, I will also present some details of the previous year's collection. By the grace of Allah the Almighty, the 63rd year has come to an end on 31st of December 2020, and the 64th year commenced on 1st of January. By the grace of Allah the Almighty, during the previous year, the community was able to present a sacrifice of £10.53 million, which is £887,000 more than the previous year's total contribution. All praise belongs to Allah. This cannot be the result of any human effort. Rather, it is purely owing to the grace of Allah the Almighty. This year again, the UK Jamaat stands in the first position amongst all the Jamaats of the world for its overall contribution. By the grace of Allah, they have made a significant increase. The Lajna-e-Maila of UK have worked extremely hard by the grace of Allah. And from the significant increase in their collection, it seems that the men have also put in a great deal of effort, just like the Lajna. Germany is in second place, and even though they have made a significant increase, UK is still ahead of them by some margin. Due to the fall in the value of its currency, Pakistan has fallen quite behind amongst the Jamaats, but still occupies the third position. Nevertheless, based on their local currency, they have made progress, and its members are offering sacrifices. The Ahmadis in Pakistan are offering sacrifices of their lives as well as their wealth, and are having to endure constant mental torture as well. May Allah the Almighty provide ease for them as well. Canada is in fourth position, then USA, India, Australia, a country in the Middle East, Indonesia, and then Ghana. From among the African countries, Ghana is now also competing with the larger countries and is in the top 10. According to the contribution per capita, USA is first, followed by Switzerland and then UK. In terms of overall contribution amongst the African countries, Ghana is first, Mauritius is second, then Nigeria, Burkina Faso, Tanzania, Sierra Leone, the Gambia, Kenya, Mali, and Benin. The total number of participants is 1.452 million.
एक पे फिर इस्लामाबाद नंबर 2 वूस्टर पार्क
In terms of overall collection, the top 10 large Jamaats from UK is Farnham number 1,
6 साउथ चीन 7
Islamabad is second,
8 बर्मिंघम वेस्ट
3rd is Worcester Park, 4th is Putney, 5th Birmingham South, 6th Gillingham,
नंबर 1 पे बदल
7th South Cheam,
मस्जिद फजल
8th is Masjid Fazal,
फिर मिडलैंड
9th is Birmingham West, and 10th is New Malden.
दफ्तर इत्फाल
The top 5 regions in terms of overall collection are Baitul Futuh is first, then Masjid Fazal, Islamabad, Midlands, and Baitul Lisan.
बैतुल फतूह
The top 10 Jamaats with regards to Daftar Atfal are Farnham is first, then Islamabad is second, Roehampton Vale, Baitul Futuh,
जमातों में मजमूई
Mitcham Park, Glasgow, Cheam, Guildford, Worcester Park, and Birmingham South.
पीटरबरा कावेंट्री
From among the smaller Jamaats, the top 10 in terms of overall collection are Leamington Spa, Spen Valley, Bournemouth, Burton-upon-Trent, Peterborough, Coventry, Edinburgh, Keighley, and Swansea. The top 5 local Amarat in Germany are Hamburg is first, then Frankfurt, Wiesbaden, Gross-Gerau, and Ditzenberg. In terms of collection of Waqf Jadid from adults, the top 10 Jamaats from Germany are Rudermark, Neuss, Nida, Ahmadiyya, Mainz, Koblenz, Hanau, Langen, Floresheim, Bensheim, and Pinneberg. In terms of collection from Daftar al-Fal, the top 5 regions are Hessen Südost, Hessen Mitte, Rhineland-Pfalz, Westfalen, and Tunis. The top 3 Jamaats in Pakistan are number 1 Lahore, number 2 was Rabwa, and number 3 Karachi. In terms of collection from adults, the positions of the districts are Islamabad is first, second Rawalpindi, third Sargodha, then Gujarat, Gujranwala, Umarkot, Hyderabad, Peshawar, Mirpur Khas, Dera Ghazi Khan. In terms of overall collection, the top 10 Jamaats are Defence Lahore, Islamabad Shahar, Township Lahore, Clifton Karachi, Darul Zikr Lahore, Gulshanabad Karachi, Samnabad Karachi, Azizabad Karachi, Rawalpindi Shahar, Allama Iqbal Town Lahore. In terms of Daftar Atfal, the 3 large Jamaats from Pakistan are first Lahore, Karachi, and Rabwa. The positions of districts for Daftar Atfal are Islamabad, Gujranwala, Sargodha, Sheikhupura, Faisalabad, Dera Ghazi Khan, Gujarat, Umarkot, Narowal, and Bhavalnagar. The positions of the Emirates in Canada are number 1 Vaughan, then Peace Village, Vancouver, Brampton West, and Toronto West. The 10 large Jamaats in Canada are Bradford, Durham, Milton East, Edmonton West, Windsor, Milton West, Regina, Ottawa West, Airdrie, and Abbotsford. The top regions in terms of Atfal are Vaughan in first position, then Toronto West, Peace Village, Calgary, and Brampton West. In terms of the Jamaat for Atfal, Bradford is first, then Durham, Milton West, London, and Hamilton Mountain.
वसूली के लिहाज से अमेरिका की 10 जमातें जो हैं मैरीलैंड, फिर लॉस एंजलिस, फिर सिएटल, फिर सिलिकॉन वैली, फिर बोस्टन, फिर ऑस्टन, ओशकोश, सिराकुस, रोचेस्टर.
In terms of overall collection, the top 10 Jamaats in the USA are Maryland, Los Angeles, Seattle, Silicon Valley, Boston, Austin, Oshkosh, Syracuse, Rochester, and Minnesota.
Orlando, Silicon Valley, Austin, Oshkosh, Minnesota, Las
The top 10
Vegas.
Jamaats in terms of Daftar Atfal are Maryland, Los Angeles, Seattle, Orlando, Silicon Valley, Austin, Oshkosh, Minnesota, Las Vegas, and Pittsburgh. The top 10 provinces from India are Kerala in first position, then Tamil Nadu, then Jammu Kashmir, Telangana, Karnataka, Odisha, Punjab, West Bengal, Delhi, and Uttar Pradesh. The Jamaats are Coimbatore, Qadian, Patapriyam, Hyderabad, Calcutta, Bangalore, Calicut, Kannur Town, Rishinagar, and Kerang. The top 10 Jamaats from Australia are Melbourne, Longwarren, Castle Hill, Marsden Park, Melbourne, Berwick, Adelaide South, Mount Druitt, Penrith, Perth,
Castle Hill,
Logan
Masroor
East,
Park, Melbourne Park,
and Blacktown.
Penrith, Mount Druitt,
The Australian Jamaats in terms of collection from adults are
Adelaide
Melbourne,
South,
Longwarren,
Perth,
Castle Hill, Marsden
Canberra.
Park, Melbourne,
Fall
Berwick,
में
Penrith,
Australia
Mount
की
Druitt,
Melbourne Long,
Blacktown,
Adelaide,
Adelaide South,
Melbourne Berwick,
Perth, and Canberra.
Mount Druitt, Logan
The Australian
East,
Jamaats in terms of
Penrith,
collection from Atfal
Castle Hill,
are Melbourne, Longwarren,
Perth
Adelaide,
और Adelaide
Melbourne,
West.
Berwick, Mount Druitt,
अल्लाह ताला इन सब कुर्बानी
Logan
करने वालों
East,
को के
Penrith,
अमवाल और नफूस में
Castle
बरकत
Hill,
अता फरमाए,
Melbourne East, Perth,
इनकी रूहानी
and
तरक्की
Adelaide
अता
West.
फरमाए और
May
हुकूक
Allah the
खुदा और
Almighty
हुकूक इबादत अदा करने
bestow
वाले हों ये लोग।
abounding blessings in the wealth and progeny of all those who have presented sacrifices.
दिनों में
May He
दोबारा
enable them to increase in their
बेहतर कर रहा
spirituality
हूं। पाकिस्तान के MTA के
and
लिए
to
भी
be
खास तौर
those
पे
who
दुआ
fulfill the
करते
rights owed to
हैं।
God
अल्लाह
and the
ताला
rights
उनकी
owed to
मुश्किलात
His
को दूर
creation.
फरमाए, उनकी परेशानियों को दूर फरमाए, मुखालफिन के
These days I've been making an appeal for prayers. I would again urge you to pray for Ahmadis of Pakistan that may Allah the Almighty remove their hardships and worries. May He keep them away from the grasp of the opponents. As for those opponents who cannot be reformed, may Allah the Almighty create the means for them to be seized. May He also create means for the swift release of those who have been imprisoned in His way, which also include the prisoners in Algeria. There is also a great deal of opposition in Algeria. Pray for them as well, but may Allah the Almighty create ease for them. Give emphasis to supplications and offering voluntary prayers and giving alms. The general conditions of Pakistan is one which lacks peace. Pray for them as well, that may Allah the Almighty establish peace and bring a swift end to their ploys to kill one another, extremism, discord, and unrest. May He grant their leaders and government the sense to become those who truly serve the people and act with justice. Similarly, pray for the general state of the world, which continues to deteriorate at a rapid rate. May Allah the Almighty have mercy on all of humanity.
Alhamdulillah, Alhamdulillah, nahmaduhu wa nasta'inuhu wa nastaghfiruhu wa nu'minu bihi wa natawakkalu alayhi wa na'udhu billahi min shururi anfusina wa min sayyiati a'malina. من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له ونشهد أن لا إله إلا الله ونشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله عباد الله رحمكم الله إن الله يأمر بالعدل والإحسان وإيتاء ذي القربى وينهى عن الفحشاء والمنكر والبغي يعظكم لعلكم تذكرون اذكروا الله يذكركم وادعوه يستجب لكم ولذكر الله أكبر.